Hello and welcome to my channel. My name's Ali and this here is Candy, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about the 6-month rule with chinchillas. So you might be asking yourself, Ali, what on God's green earth is the 6-month rule with chinchillas? Well, I shall tell you now. It's an idea that's been going around the internet for a while, and also it's been promoted by many breeders, and that is the idea that you're not allowed to have your chinchilla out for playtime or give your chinchilla a treat before they are 6 months of age. Now, the reason why I'm making this video is because of one of my favourite things, which is Facebook chinchilla groups. Now, I'm going to level with you. I don't actually belong to a lot of Facebook groups because they annoy me far too much, but my husband still does belong to a fair few, and he often will show me stuff and say, hey, have a look at this, and I go, oh, okay. He showed me a post the other day from someone that said, my chinchilla is finally 6 months of age, I can finally let them out of their cage for playtime. Or, my chinchilla is finally 6 months of age, I can give them a treat. And I will go into the logic behind these rules in a moment. The reason why they say you shouldn't let your chinchilla out of their cage for 6 months is because young chinchillas have trouble regulating their blood sugar, and if they have excessive amounts outside their cage, it can cause their blood sugar to get mucked up and can cause them to crash, and in some cases, extreme cases, it can cause seizures, which is never a good thing. So breeders are saying to people, to be on the safe side, just have no time out of their cage for the first 6 months at all. So personally, I think that this is a fairly extremist view, and I honestly think it can do more damage than good. So what do you think is going to happen when that chinchilla owner's chinchilla is finally 6 months of age and they can let them out for playtime for the first time? Number one, they are probably going to let them out for far too long because they're so excited about having their chinchilla out of playtime for the first time ever, because it's now safe, because they're 6 months of age. The chinchilla just isn't going to be used to having that time outside their cage. They're not going to be fit and healthy because they haven't had that regular exercise, and it can actually cause them to get exhausted extremely quickly. It's the equivalent of saying to us, spend 6 months in your bedroom and then go out for a walk and a runabout. You're going to get exhausted quite quickly because you're not fit. Yeah, I don't necessarily think that that's the way to go, because I think restricting it will just encourage people to let them out for far too long once they're allowed to let them out. Personally, I would go for a much softer option, which is to say, yes, you can have your chinchilla out for playtime, but you have to limit the amount of time they have outside their cage to no more than 10 minutes. 10 minutes is the absolute maximum, and you should not do it every day. That would be my advice. This way you're gradually introducing your chinchilla to the idea of having time outside their cage. You can spend time with them outside their cage, which can help with bonding with your chinchilla, and your chinchilla can just get used to the running about without it being for too long. And it's a gradual baby step process. To the point where they're 6 months of age, yes, you can let them out for slightly longer, rather than it all happening in one go. Now, some people would say this is dangerous advice because you should just not have your chinchilla out for 6 months, but I personally think it's far better to do baby steps to the point where you can let them out for longer. But if you're going to let your chinchilla out, please no more than 10 minutes. It really has to be a strict amount of time you can have your chinchilla outside their cage for. So that's my take on having your chinchilla out for playtime. I think it's far better to introduce it slowly and gradually to the chinchilla, rather than saying none for 6 months and then yeah, you're allowed to have your chinchilla out for playtime, because that is going to be far more of an obstacle for your chinchilla than if you gradually, baby steps, get them used to being outside their cage. Same with treats. The reason why breeders say don't let your chinchilla have a treat before the age of 6 months old is because chinchillas' digestive systems, as we know, are extremely sensitive, and if your chinchilla gets diarrhea at a young age, it can be far more dangerous for the chinchilla. But again, what do you think is going to happen if you tell a pet owner they are not allowed to give their chinchilla any treats for 6 months, and then at 6 months of age they're finally allowed to give them treats? What do you think is going to happen? Chances are is they're going to let their chinchilla have far too many treats, and possibly even the wrong treats, and because they haven't had any variation in their diet for 6 months, more than likely it will cause them to have issues like diarrhea and possibly bloat. So I would say again, this is the extremist view to restrict it completely. It's far better to say, yes, you can give your chinchilla a treat every now and again, but it has to be a healthy option. So for example, before the age of 6 months, I would not give your chinchilla rose hips, I wouldn't give your chinchilla goji berries, and I wouldn't give your chinchilla bee pollen. They are far too sugary, and obviously you should avoid fruits and nuts altogether. Before the age of 6 months, I would say it's okay to give your chinchilla an occasional dandelion head, or an occasional dried flower, or an occasional hay-based treat. They are fine in moderation for your chinchilla, and it will get your chinchilla used to having those types of foods. It's a gradual process. So again, not overdoing it, every once in a while, not every day. Give your chinchilla a little hay-based treat, or some dried leaves, or a few dried flowers that are safe for your chinchillas. Nothing too crazy. The idea that you should restrict it completely seems bizarre to me, because then you'll just end up with a chinchilla that's ill at 6 months of age, rather than gradually introducing them to the food. It's baby steps, gradually introducing them to the food and gradually introducing them to treats. As I say, there are quite a few treats that you would avoid before the age of 6 months. So as I say, sugary treats, things like rose hips, goji berries, bee pollen. They are borderline treats anyway, whether you should actually be giving them to your chinchilla, so I definitely avoid those before the age of 6 months. But things like the occasional dandelion head, the occasional chamomile flower, is not going to hurt your baby chinchilla, trust me. I know. I personally give my chinchillas treats from this time that they can start eating solids. I will give them occasional little tiny amounts just to get their body used to that. So from the age when they can start eating solids, I do actually give my baby chinchillas an occasional treat. It's normally a hay-based treat, so something quite healthy that would maybe even in their hay to begin with, like a dried dandelion leaf or a dried dandelion flower, or some marigolds. Just something in very small quantities. It just gets them used to having the occasional treat, and if you're going to give your chinchillas treats before the age of 6 months, don't do it every day, but then you don't do that every day for chinchillas anyway. Chinchillas shouldn't have treats every day. They should be a treat so once in a while, and just be ever so careful. But I'd say restricting it completely can actually do more damage than good, because when they are finally allowed to have a treat by this golden 6 month of age, they can chinchilla owners can overdo it because they're not used to giving their chinchillas treats, and it's like a novelty, and they can make their chinchillas quite ill. So it's far better baby steps, gradual processes. So the only thing I do agree with the 6 month rule is the idea that you shouldn't give your chinchilla a wheel before the age of 6 months. Now I do actually agree with this one, because a wheel is unregulated exercise, and that could cause problems for your chinchilla if they were to overuse it and get exhausted. So I had to put Candy back because she was getting a bit restless. So yes, I think it's far better to use a common sense approach and not restrict it completely, because restricting it completely can cause problems later on. So just use your common sense. Don't let your chinchilla out for hours and hours. Let them out for a maximum of 10 minutes. Don't restrict chinchillas' treats, just give them occasional really healthy treats, but just not very often, not every day. And yeah, enjoy having time with your chinchillas. The occasional treat for your chinchilla before the age of 6 months is not going to kill them. Neither is letting your chinchilla out for playtime for a restricted amount, so for example 5 to 10 minutes. That is not going to hurt your chinchilla, especially if you don't do it every day. It's going to be fine for your chinchilla. So this idea that it's no, you shouldn't ever let your chinchilla out for playtime, you should never let your chinchilla have a treat before the age of 6 months, I think is slightly ludicrous. I can understand the logic behind it, but I don't think it's very practical for most people. Obviously, do what you think is best. If you would prefer not to have your chinchilla out for playtime before the age of 6 months, or you prefer to not give your chinchilla a treat before the age of 6 months to be safe, that is entirely up to you and your own prerogative. I'm just letting you know that it's just not going to cause the massive amount of problems that people say that it will. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And I shall see you in another video soon. Goodbye for now.